We're now on Daf Samach Zayin Amud Beis, and we just established that with regard to Masros, the Rabbanan made a Gzera, and they said that the Meruach and Aku is Machayev in Maser, because otherwise the rich people are going to do this subterfuge and they'll get away with it by being machne their grains to the guy, and the guy will do the meruch, then they'll get it back from the guy. They'll pack themselves up for masa. Why don't they make the same gzera in challah? I mean, the Brisa says that after the guy is misgayer, then we have to tell him that his truma is that I'm sorry, this challah is nechelas l'zorin. Why is this challah l'zorin? In challah also you have to be afraid that maybe he'll transfer ownership over his grains, over his dough, to an akum. The akum will do the gilgul, and then he'll get it back from the akum, and it'll be potter. So why don't you be consistent? Why does the Brisa make this distinction between challah and Maser? In both cases, there's a possibility of utilizing and manipulating the halacha of Gilgul Akum or Meruach Menakum to the benefit of the rich people in order to exempt them from Maser and Chal. So the Gemara answers, you know what? In the case of Chala, there was no need for such a Gzera, because if the rich people want to use subterfuge, then they don't need to give it over to the Akum for purposes of Gilgul. They can simply bake the dough. Let me start a little earlier. They can simply make a dough out of less than the shear of challah, less than 43 and a third beitzah. After the afile pochas mechamesha revoim kemach viot. So in other words, the Rabbanon, in the case of challah, did not find any need to make this gzera regarding Gilgul Akum, because if the motivation for the gzera is the fear that these rich guys are going to circumvent the chiyuv of challah, then your gzeras are not going to make a dent. Any rich guy who wants to circumvent the chiyuv of challah, all he has to do is make sure that his dough is less than 43 and a third beitzim. I'm sorry, 43 and a fifth beitzim, sorry. So the Gemara says that's no answer. If you're telling me that the Rabbanan didn't have to make a gzera as far as the Gilgul of an Akum, because they have another way of circumventing the chiyuv, then I'm going to apply the same logic to Trumas and Masras. Why? Because Rav Oshia. Gemara says Trumanami after the Ovid like Rav Oshia. You want to find out a way of circumventing Chala? I'll give you a way of circumventing Maser. Why? The Amar Rabbi Yoshia Mar Modem Al Tuaso Machdisa Vochel Kadesh they mem to Chels Pturim in a Maser. Okay, now here we have to know the following. In order to be Chayiv Maser, you need not only Meruach, but you also need Re'iyas Pnei Habayis. And the Meruach has to take place before the Re'iyas Pnei Habayis, otherwise there was no Re'iyas Pnei Habayis, meaning if he hasn't removed the chaff by winnowing and the kernel is covered with the chaff, then the kernel doesn't see the bias. And we need Re'iyas Pnei Habayis to be Chayiv. So there's a very simple way of subterfuge of avoiding the chiyuv maser by employing this principle of Rav Oshia, namely, all you have to do is delay your meruach until after you take it into the bias b'motzel of the motes, meaning on when he has the chaff. Let's see how he translate the word motes. Chaff, yes. Is it chaff or chaff? Yeah, chaff. I think you put it. Right. Now, what does it mean when it says here, Rav Oshia Kadesh Be'em Tocheles, that this subterfuge, this circumventing by bringing the tvua into the bais before you remove the motes, that only it permits what's called an achilas keva. But feeding an animal is an achila roy. An achila roy is mutter. And what are you telling me? That there's no reason to make these gzeres about Gilgal? I'll say the same thing about Meruach. There's no need, to we should generate a chi of maser even though the akum did the Meruach, because otherwise he's going to use the akum Meruach as a way of getting away with mafresh maser. If he needs a way of getting away with mafresh maser, all he has to do is employ the method of Rav Oshia Inami. And not only that, I have another method by which you can subterfuge and avoid the chiv maser, and that's inami the ayleid gagos v'der kafifos. Rias pnei abayis has to be a re'iyah kidarka, which means that you take the grains after meruach right into the front door. But if you sent it down through a what's that thing called, a skylight, right? You say you have a skylight and you got a pulley system, and that's not considered rias pnei abayis. So now the Gemara, to make a distinction here between Maser and Chala, the Gemara is going to analyze the psychology, whether or not a person would really, really take advantage of all these methods of avoiding the chiyuv. Like baking with less than 43 and a fifth eggs worth of a dough, or taking his tefua in through the roofs and the skylights, or taking it into the house when it's still in the chaff before Meru. Chasam over there with regard to Maser. Mefarhesi, you know what? We really don't have to avoid, we don't have to concern ourselves with the possibility of his using these methodologies of Rav Oshio or Derek Agos Vifos, because as far as Milsa, the whole public are going to realize what's going on up here. The guy didn't do Meruach like everybody else does in the field, brought his tefua in, and now inside his house he's doing Meruach. Like, give it a break. Or he's taking it through his roof. Everybody sees that. It's like really embarrassing. So therefore, he's not going to really do that. If he's a rich guy and he wants to avoid maser because 1/10 of his produce is a massive amount, he's not going to take advantage of this method, which publicly is going to embarrass him. You're no good. But what he'll do is, privately he'll give it over to the akum. So that's why the Rabbanan had to make this gzera that the meruach of an akum, even though midaraisa it's eno machayv, but now it's going to be machayv midrabanan. But hacha. Now let's go back to chala. What was the possibility of chala, of his baking less than 43 and a fifth beitzim? Bitzina. That's a very easy way of, nobody's going to know about it. The low zeal Beit Milson, always going to make him embarrassed about it. Nobody knows about it. It's all it's concealed. And therefore, like we said before, he has a great way of avoiding chala, and therefore there's no need to cancel the ptur of Meruach Akum through this gzera, because he has a very easy way of avoiding hafrashas chala. And this leads us to the Mishnah. The Mishnah now is going to go through the ritual of bringing a korban mincha. Now, again, technically, the subject of this Mishnah is the korban omer, but it applies to all menachos. Bolo isaron, right? He already has an isaron of flour, and that's all he needs for the omer. So therefore, no say, now he needs to add, like in any mincha, 2 elements. He has to add shemen and levona. So what does he do? Everything that he prepared, this fine flour, is now in a klishares. He adds to the klishares shemen and levona. But there's a little bit of a tricky business over here, because the levona should not be mixed with the rest of the mincha. The shemen is mixed over and over again, but not the levona. If the levona gets mixed in, even a small amount of levona, we already learned back in the beginning of Menachos, that's going to pass. So even though it's all in one kli, the levona has to be separated on the side. Yotzak ubolal heniv vehigish, and komets vehikir ashana chomka. So first of all, we need yotzak. Yotzak means a second time he's going to pour oil onto the flour, and now he's ready for bolal. Bolal means he's going to mix it all together. Then hanif, now that he has the mixture, he brings it towards the mizbeach. He touches the southwest point of the mizbeach. Which is called Hagosha. That's after he did Tenufa. Again, Tenufa, we said, was four directions and up and down. And now we're ready for Kmitza. After the Kmitza, he takes the Kometz. Now already it's the Kohen. Until now, it could have been Yisrael. But the Kohen takes over the show, and now he brings the Kometz over to the Mizbeach to burn it. That's called Haktorah. And the Shiorei HaMincha, the rest of the mincha, which was a fully sorrow, and he only took out the komets to burn it, then he feeds it to the kohen. Mishakarva omer. Now, when the omer is brought, it's matir chadash. So all the new crop now of all the farmers is being marketed. Is yotzim umotzin shuk Yerushalayim shumoli kemach koli, and Reb Meir's not excited about it. So you see the flooding of the marketplace with all the chadash, because now they can sell the chadash because the new crop is mutter through the havas haomer, and Reb Meir's not happy about it. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda Omer birtzon chacham. So let's explain the yesod, how we say the fundamental issue about which Rabbi Yehuda and Reb Meir are divided. We know that when something is asur and it's what's called lo b'dili b'nei, meaning the whole year round you're used to eating it, and it looks identical, like for example chametz, right? So on Erev Pesach, we have to bodek the chametz and we have to destroy it. Why? Because you can't leave chametz around. If you leave chametz around, you might be tempted, as Tos says at the beginning of Pesachim, to eat it. Lo v'dilimine, the whole year round he eats chametz, so he might eat it chas shalom on Pesach, Nisakaris. Now chadash, from that perspective, is almost identical to chametz, because chadash looks identical to yashan. By the way, the first major city in America that was makpid on chadash to eat yashan was Chicago. That's because of Baron Soloveitchik. Anyway, so now the question is, can we allow the farmers to prepare all the chadash so that when they bring the Omer on the 16th of Nisan, they're going to flood the market with the chadash? And in a certain sense, we should require bedika. What do I mean by bedika? Don't get involved in chadash. Like you get involved in chametz, you might come to eat it. Of course, this is something that you're used to eating the whole year round. Don't start with it. That's Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says no. For some reason, Rabbi Yehuda makes a distinction between chametz and chadash, as we'll soon see why. And he says, no, we don't have to worry about chadash. Let them deal with chadash. Prepare it, let them reap it, let them make it into a dough, and whatever they have to do. And we're not afraid that they'll come to eat it. So the Gemara asks for a little gazer, Rabbi Yehuda, Dilma Asi L'Michlane, or Minu, but wait a minute. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, this is a Mishnah Psachim, in the first parak of Psachim, Bodkin Orli Abasar, Virus Shachris, Ushas Habir. We have to get rid of the chametz. But interesting, Rabbi Yehuda stops at Shasabir. That's the 15th in the morning, 2 weeks from tomorrow. Did I say the 15th? I meant the 14th, right? The 14th in the morning. Let's say he doesn't do the Bedika neither the night going into the 14th nor the day in the morning of the 14th or the afternoon of the 14th. Now he's in Yontif. So Rabbi Yehuda says no, no Bedika. You're going to do a Bedika on Yontif? You're going to search for chametz? Maybe you'll eat it. Then he does a Bedika on Yontif. But anyway, we see clearly that Rabbi Yehuda is afraid that he might come to eat it because he's used to eating chametz all year round. He might come to eat it. Why not say the same thing with regard to chadash? Amar Rabba Shiny chadash, and here we turn to Daf Samaches. Mito shelo he tarta lo el yedei kituv zacharu. We're going to tell the farmers that they're not allowed to do ktsira on the chadash until after the omer is brought. And the only way we're going to allow them to reap the crop is in a very unusual way, which is called plucking. Kituv means plucking. You can actually forget about the sickle. This is a no sickle business. And you're going to have to pull out the grains from the ground. Well, once he's doing that, he's going to remember that it's chadash. You can't forget that. And we'll finish up with Amar Abaye Tenech Ktsira, but Tchira Varkoda Ma'ikal Memar. If we're going to allow the farmer after the Ktsira, because we're not afraid that during the Ktsira he's gonna violate these Chadash, he's doing with the Kituf, so he remembers. But what about afterwards? He does the Tchina, meaning he crushes it to make a flour. And harkoda means, you put it into this sifter and you sift out all the pebbles and so forth and so on. Ma'ikal Memar. I mean, here he's doing it the way he does it the whole year round. Halokasha tchina brechaya dida v'arkod al gabi nafa. We're going to make sure that he does the tchina in an unusual way and the harkoda in an unusual way. What's unusual about tchina? He's not going to crush it the normal way. He'll put it into a hand mill. They used to have mills, but no mills for chadash. And harkada, he's going to have to do it not by putting it into the sieve, but turning over the sieve backwards and using the back of the sieve. He won't forget it, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda says no need for exera of Shemayav Aliyachla. Okay then, so that's where we're going to stop for today. And tomorrow we're up to Samach Ches. Oh, and I'm pretty sure that Samach Ches Amid Beis, let me just take a look, there's a major Mishnah. Oh, yeah. Wow. I have seen that Mishnah many times, but never Keseder in the Masechta. Okay, then. So I'll wish you a great day. Thank you so much. Tomorrow it's 9:30.